Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Viṣṇupād Paramahamsa Parivrājikacārya Stotra Shatri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Śrīla Prabhupāda Ki Jai. Jayam Viṣṇupād Paramahamsa Parivrājikacārya Stotra Shatri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupāda Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Nama Acharya Śrī Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Sundara Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. So this morning we're reading Srimad. So, reading 9th canto, chapter 14, King Purūravā enchanted by Urvaśī. And we left off on text 44 and 45. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 44 and 45. Stali. How does it start? I can't see. Okay. Yeah, we'll read 45. Urvaśīm mantrato dhyanan. Excuse me, that's dhyayan. Dhyayan. Adhararanim. Uttaram. Atmanam. Ubhayor madhye yat tat prajananam prabhu Urvaśī mantrato dhyayan adhararanim uttaram Atmanam ubhayor madhye yattat prajanam prabhu Urvaśī mantrato dhyayan adhararanimuttaram atmanam ubhayor madhye yatat prajananam prabhu. Urvaśī mantrato dhyayan adhararanimuttaram atmanam ubhayor madhye yattat prajananam prabhu. Please recite. Ubayor madhye Anyone online would like to recite?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Please go ahead, Vanessa.
Urvaśī mantrato dhyayan
adhararanimuttaram
atmanam ubhayor
madhye
yatat prajananam prabhu.
Taprajananam prabhu.
Okay, that was, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Okay, so we'll word by word. Urvaśī. Mantrataha. By chanting the required mantra. Dhyayan. Meditating upon. Adharam. Lower. Arani wood. Uttaram, and the upper one. Atmanam, himself. Ubhayo madhye, in between the two. Yattat, that which he meditated upon. Prajananam, as a son. Prabhu, the king. Translation. When the process of fruitive yajña became manifest within his heart, King Purūravā went to the same spot where he had left Agnisthali. There he saw that from the womb of a shami tree, an ashwata tree had grown. He then took a piece of wood from that tree and made it into 2 aranis. Desiring to go to the planet where Urvaśī resided, he chanted mantras, meditating upon the lower arani as Urvaśī, the upper one as himself, and the piece of wood between them as his son. In this way, he began to ignite a fire. Purport. The Vedic fire for performing yajña was not ignited with ordinary matches or similar devices. Rather, the Vedic sacrificial fire was ignited by the aranyas, or two sacred pieces of wood, which produce fire by friction with the third. Such a fire is necessary for the performance of yajña. If successful, a yajña will fulfill the desire of its performer. Thus, Purūravā took advantage of the process of yajña to fulfill his lusty desires. He thought of the lower aranyas as Urvaśī, the upper one as himself, and the middle one as his son. A relevant Vedic mantra quoted herein by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is Shami Garbhat Agni Mantha. A similar mantra is Urvaśyam Urvaśī Purūravā. Purūravā wanted to have children continuously by the womb of Urvaśī. His only ambition was to have sex life with Urvaśī and thereby get a son. In other words, he had so much lust in his heart that even while performing yajña, he thought of Urvaśī instead of thinking of the master of yajña, Yajñeśvara, Lord Viṣṇu. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Manchakalpatrubhishcha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation one more time. When the process of fruitive yajña became manifest within his heart, King Purūravā went to the same spot where he had left Agnistali. There he saw that from the womb of a shami tree, an ashwata tree had grown. He then took a piece of wood from that tree and made it into two aranyas, desiring to go to the planet where Urvaśī resided. He chanted mantras, meditating upon the lower aranya as Urvaśī, upper one as himself, and the piece of wood between them as his son. In this way he began to ignite fire. So, one text in the Bhagavad Gita that I thought of when I read this purport and translation 9:25 Yanti Deva Vrata Devan Pitrin Yanti Pitri Vrata Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja Yanti Mat Yajanopi Mam. Krishna explains that if we worship a certain object, then we take birth among those demigods, whether it's demigods or ancestors, ghosts and spirits. But if you worship me, it says, Yantimam Yajñopimam, then you will take birth on my planet, where I eternally reside. So we have to place our faith in something and worship a particular object. That is necessary. We cannot go without it. So therefore, we will take a particular birth, or will of the desired worshipping object. And in the future text in this chapter of 9, Krishna encourages to worship himself. And the practice is very simple. Patram pushpam palam tvayam yame bhakti prayachati. It's not very complicated. Simply, we need to have a bhakti, devotion to Krishna, to the Lord. Doesn't matter what birth we take, whether we are righteous Brahman or take birth as a Vaishya, Shudra, any species, doesn't matter. As long as we have that most important item, bhakti. And wonderfully, in this purport to text 925, Srila Prabhupada says, the Krishna consciousness movement is therefore distributing sublime information to the entire human society to the effect that by simply chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, one can become perfect in this life and go back home, back to Godhead. So the process of chanting Nam Sankirtan and Bhakti in general is a very powerful practice. It's more powerful than our conditioning, than our mind, and than our association with the external energy. It's completely independent of anything. And here we see in this example that if you Purūravā, he becomes fascinated by Urvaśī's beauty. And then what happens is that he enjoys with Urvaśī, and then she leaves him to heavenly realm. because he broke the promise of not seeing. Excuse me. So what happened? Urvaśī, she had some conditions under which she could enjoy with him, and the one condition was that he cannot come naked before her, and that promise was broken. The 2 lambs were stolen, and Purūravā, he was chasing after them, and eventually he came back naked. Then Purūravā, feeling devastated because Urvaśī is gone, he was roaming the earth for so long looking for her, and finally he finds her at Kurukshetra. And he wants to reunite with her, but then Urvaśī preaches to him, and she tries to convey a message that you cannot put faith in a woman. Don't trust a materialistic woman. They're so bold, they'll do any sin to get pleasure. Even if you're a well-wisher of a woman, she's seeking pleasure. Materialistic woman will just continue looking for that pleasure. And so the words of Urvaśī did not break the attachment and did not enlighten Purūravā, and therefore she had to give a concession to him to enjoy one night of the year. We can spend time together one night of the year. In Aila Gita, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he mentions something interesting. He says, until one realizes that the Supreme is the only enjoyer and that all women should be regarded as spiritual masters, one's mentality will not be purified of the contamination of lust. So until you accept proper etiquette in relationship with women, contamination of lust will not go away from the heart. And in this example, following what's happening in this story of Purūravā, he was not listening to Urvaśī's instructions. And of course, because he's not listening, he's trying to enjoy her, get her back, enjoy more with her than just one night. He feels sorrow. He feels sorry. And then Urvaśī tells him that you should seek shelter of the Gandharvas, for they will be able to deliver me to you again. And Purūravā, in accordance with the words of Urvaśī, satisfied the Gandharvas by prayers. And then they gave him the Yajñeśvara girl, who looked exactly like Urvaśī. He went to the forest with Yajñeśvara girl, and he wanted to enjoy Yajñeśvara, but then he realized that this is not Urvaśī. His mind is completely fixed on Urvaśī. Then King Purūravā leaves Yajñeśvara in the forest, returns home, and meditates on how he wants to enjoy with Urvaśī. He doesn't give it up, and he performs a yajña, which Treta Yuga begins, and the process of performing yajña, which will fulfill any desire, including food activities, appeared within his heart. And in this text, we also hear that this process of food yajña became manifest within the heart of King Purūravā. So Purūravā performs a karmakanda sacrifice, and he establishes the Vedic sacrifice of karmakanda in the beginning of Treta Yuga. That's Srila Prabhupada describes that's what usually happens. Usually, in this case of beginning of Treta Yuga, the king will establish such sacrifice. And in one purport here in this chapter, he speaks of the example of King Priyavrata, who also did the same thing. And at the end, because the sacrifice was performed, Purūravā, he goes to Gandharvaloka. And there he realizes his illusion and his attachment to Urvaśī. And that temporary attachment is changed to attachment to Krishna. Eventually he accepts the Lord, Krishna, and becomes a renunciant of this material association. In this age of Kali, in this previous text it was mentioned that the way to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead is by Sankirtan Yajña. This is what's recommended. Yajña Sankirtana prayer, Yajñanti hi Samedasa. And in the Bhumi Gita, Maharaj Parikshit asks a question to Shukadev Goswami. This is 12th canto how can we become free from this contaminating age of Kali? And the answer is given that by chanting. The ocean of faults, this Kali Yuga is the ocean of faults, but simply by chanting, you can be promoted to the transcendental kingdom. Kalir dosha nidhirajan asti heka mahan gunan. Kirtanateva Krishnasya mukta sangha param vrajad. And just as a king, a qualified king might have rags and thieves in his nation, because he's qualified and because he's in this position of the king, he can annihilate, or he can get rid of all the rags and thieves. So similarly, in this age of Kali, this one most important quality of Nam Sankirtan can also destroy material bondage, free us from that, and from all these imperfections, faulty qualities of this age of Kali. It's described in the Bhagavatam that even natural allies, they will have problems with each other in the age of Kali. It's a very difficult age for spiritual life. And yesterday, the text of this second canto was brought up in regards to approaching the Lord with material desires or with desires of liberation. Those who have broad intelligence, they will still approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because He's the ultimate authority, and He will if we have material desires, He will supply material desires. He will, what's the right word? He will give you the necessary desires. So, akama sarva kama va, moksha kama udaradi, this verse. And in our practice, we also might have, when one begins this spiritual practice, he might be full of material desires, the person might be full of material desires of liberation, but as a course of correction, the practice of Nam Kirtan is very purifying, this process. So although the inner motivation is not pure when we begin chanting Hare Krishna mantra, associating with devotees and Srimad Bhagavatam, because the process of sadhana bhakti is given, we can purify ourselves from this unnecessary material desires. And devotees who practice, they understand that although in the beginning desires are there, if I hear Srimad Bhagavatam and understand the Siddhanta of Srimad Bhagavatam, then eventually I out of choice give up these material desires. And I'm no longer interested in just performing bhakti for the benefit of my self-interest. It extends further to please Krishna. Bhakti is the means of all perfection. It doesn't require any assistance of jnana and karma. Here we see that Purūravā, he's had so much lust that even during performance of Yuga Dharma, sacrifice in Treta Yuga, he still thought of Urvaśī at doing that sacrifice. He supposed to be thinking of Yajñeśvara, of Viṣṇu, but Urvaśī came to his mind. I was thinking that in practice of Nam Sankirtan, we also can experience similar things. We might be chanting, one might be chanting, but still material desires and things that divert the attention might come to the mind of a practitioner. Like one example in the Bhagavad Gita, we see that Arjuna, he saw the universal form, and whilst he saw the universal form, it confused him actually. So therefore in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he's asking a question of uncertainty, whether he should be worshipping the impersonal Brahman and manifested, or he should be worshipping Krishna. He's asking that question, worshipping the Lord. And his confusion was, of course, destroyed by Krishna. And he gives a practice, Krishna gives a practice, or he gives the response that satisfies Arjuna, he can satisfy us as well. He speaks about how in perfection of bhakti, we fix our mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many favorable practices that are there to fix our mind. We might be chanting, worshipping the deities, and going to preach. Srila Prabhupada, he would marry these two important practices is chanting and preaching. He would put them together as a sure way to succeed in spiritual life. So bhakti in this perfection stage is thinking of Krishna constantly by various devotional activities, reading books, chanting, making prasadam, serving the deities, going to a marketplace, Srila Prabhupada explains, and purchasing something for the Lord. So that's one way. But if you can't fixate your mind on Krishna, then he gives the practice of sadhana bhakti. And sadhana bhakti is following rules and regulations. And it will help you to develop the taste for attachment to the Lord and desire to attain Krishna. Two aspects of bhakti in perfection are very important, is to have the worshipful deity of Shyama Sundar, as at least for the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's important to not worship any other form of Godhead. And plus, along with that, we should have faith in following the loving mood of someone who lives in Vrindavan, inhabitants of Vrindavan. So this is a practice in perfection. But if we can attain perfection, sadhana bhakti will lead us to that perfection. Of course, if we avoid offenses in chanting and performing devotional activities. Because offenses, they will destroy the faith in Vaidhi Bhakti in the process of sadhana. This is important to avoid the offenses. And also, if we don't avoid the offenses, it can weaken our ability to perform devotional activities, ability to chant. We will not have a taste for chanting. Whereas attentive japa or attentive nam sankirtan, it avoids strength and protection in the practice. So then, fix your mind. If you can't fix your mind, then do sadhana. And if you can't do sadhana, Krishna explains in this 12th chapter, then what will help you to desire, attain Krishna, is a practice of karma yoga. And again, sakama karma means with desires of self-interest, but eventually we all can purify to practicing karma according to Shastra. Those desires can be purified and turn into nishkama. And the difference between nishkama and pure bhakti is that there's still material interest in a type of service that I do for the Lord, for example, type of things that I will do. I'm not completely accepting His will to the full extent. And very important point in this 12th chapter that we see Krishna makes is that impersonal path is very difficult to practice. It's not easy, and it can make one proud. If you practice jnana or choose to practice a difficult path in this Kali Yuga, in this age, it makes one proud. Why would we choose to practice a difficult path if the easiest one is given? Simply because a person wants to, in a simple term, show off. He wants to practice something that will bring attention to him. And there's one example in Chaitanya Lila that I was thinking of. This is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who, when he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was speaking with Gopinath Acharya, and he said that, what's the name of this sannyasi? And he said that this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, knowing that he is he got initiated by Ishvara Puri, he thought and said that this is a second-class sannyasi, Bharati community. And he wanted to initiate him into the first-class sannyas. But Gopinath Acharya said that Mahaprabhu doesn't rely on this formality, external formalities. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he wanted to teach Vedanta philosophy to Mahaprabhu. And so they sat together for 7 days, and Mahaprabhu, because he was so humble, he listened to Vedanta philosophy. Actually, Gopinath Acharya, he was trying to convince Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that this is Krishna Chaitanya is actually God. He manifests all the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya didn't believe in that. and he would give shastric arguments why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not the supreme. He would say that Chaitanya Goswami is simply a great devotee, but the Lord doesn't come in Kali Yuga. He's three Yuga avatar. He doesn't appear as an incarnation in Kali Yuga. And eventually they sat down for 7 days. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was explaining the Vedanta philosophy. Mahaprabhu was listening. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked Mahaprabhu that you're listening, but are you understanding? You're not asking anything. You're not making me convinced that you understand what I'm saying. And Mahaprabhu said that I perfectly understand everything you said, but the conclusions that you speak about are not exactly, they're not exact, they're not what I accept. That's not what accepted by the Vaishnavas and by the Vaishnava scriptures. And specifically, of course, the impersonal way of seeing the Lord, formless, and Nirakar, and also Nirvishesha, is not accepted by the Vaishnavas, is not accepted by Mahaprabhu and his followers. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told them that actually Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Swayam Bhagavan, is full of all opulences. You should see him like that. And he convinced Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in the course of his discussion. Then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said that you delivering the entire world is not a great task, but delivering me is certainly a wonderful power. I had become a dull-headed due to reading too many books on logic and became like an iron bar. Yet you melted me. And he composed a nice verse that we read on Guru Purnima by Javira Prabhu in the morning. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga, this verse describing the position of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the practice that he brings with him to us. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was very merciful to Bhattacharya. He gave him the Mahaprasadam. He brought Mahaprasadam from Jagannath Puri, embraced him, and that pride and any traces of impersonalism were completely destroyed by this kindness of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And at some point, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what is the most important item of bhakti? And Mahaprabhu said that the most important item of bhakti is Nam Sankirtan. Because Nam Sankirtan, if we participate, it will award all perfection to us. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited in his Leela how everyone who he would meet becomes delivered by chanting Maha Mantra, chanting Hare Krishna mantra. And at the end, he leaves us beautiful instructions of Shikshashtaka, 8 verses, summarizes the mood in which devotee should approach the holy name and chant Hare Krishna mantra. Very eloquent instructions. At some point in Brahma Samhita, Srila Prabhupada says, try to study and enter into the spirit of this hymn with great care and attention. As a daily function, he gives instructions to everyone who reads Brahma Samhita. So also we can see that according to Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings and Palashruti of this Shikshashtaka, it will increase devotion and ecstatic love and attachment for Krishna if we recite this verse, and also daily, it becomes a daily function of a devotee. So it's very important and emphasized by Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada to read Shikshashtaka prayers, to meditate on them. I wanted to read one verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto. We have chapter 5 and text number 4. It's Vidura's talks with Maitreya. Therefore, great sage, please give me instruction on the transcendental devotional service of the Lord, so that he who is situated in the heart of everyone can be pleased to impart from within knowledge of the absolute truth in terms of the ancient Vedic principles delivered only to those who are purified by the process of devotional service. In this commentaries, Srila Prabhupada explains how sadhana bhakti turns into Raga Bhakti. Jnanis, yogis, and karmis cannot expect this direct cooperation of the Lord. They are not able to satisfy the Lord by transcendental love and service, nor do they believe in such service to the Lord. So the karmis and jnanis, because their faith is not completely developed, they're not able to approach and satisfy the Lord to the degree that He wants. They cannot perform devotional service and please Krishna. But the Bhakti process, as performed under the regulative principle of Vaidhi Bhakti, or devotional service, following the prescribed rules and regulations, is defined by the real scriptures and confirmed by great acharyas. So Bhakti, practice in regulation under supervision of a spiritual master, leads us to this result of Raga Bhakti, as Srila Prabhupada will say. The practice can help neophyte devotee rise to the stage of Raga Bhakti, in which the Lord responds from within as the Chaitya Guru, or the spiritual master of superconsciousness. So there is a distinction between the impersonal path and the path of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, path of, in the beginning of Vaidhi Bhakti and then Raga Bhakti. So we should try to cultivate the mood given to us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the mood of separation, and the mood in which we become completely dependent on the mercy. Of course, we have our own practice of sadhana bhakti, but ultimately kripa, ultimately this mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, is actually all that devotees made of. We depend on that kripa, very much so. And so accepting the path of sadhana and extending sadhana to preaching, this will be, at least if we are serious about attaining the result in one lifetime, this will be something that is pleasing. Avoiding the offenses and chanting the holy name in public, nama sankirtan, besides our own practice, is essential. Narada Muni says that this practice is giving much. It's 100 times better than just chanting by yourself. So if we engage others in chanting Nam Sankirtan, distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, it's a perfect way to remember Krishna, and it's a way that we can please Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by engaging other devotees, by giving the holy name to others. This is the practice given to us and very much emphasized by teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada in his lectures and commentaries. So I'll stop here. Thank you for your attention today. If there is anything that you'd like to maybe comment or any questions in regards to the commentaries of this text, the past time, or anything that I said.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the nice lecture. At the beginning of the lecture, you mentioned that who or what you worship determines where you go in your next life, and well, I guess it made me think about what in the Bhagavad Gita it says what or who you're thinking about at the time of death determines where you go in your next. Yeah. So do you want to kind of clarify those two situations? Because it could just be what you're thinking about at the time of death versus, actively worshiping, right?
Yeah, this is mentioned in the 8th chapter about your most predominant thought, which will take you to a particular life, particular form of life. But I was quoting the verse in the 9th chapter. That's a different verse that speaks specifically about worship, because the whole chapter emphasizes worship. So if there's a worship of ancestors or demigods or the Bhutas, then that worship will lead you to take birth among this species of life. But then Krishna emphasizes that worship me. Then the whole 9th chapter at the end concludes in that. There are like a number of verses where Krishna is trying to convince Arjuna to accept worship of the highest of me. Man mana bhava mad bhakto. He speaks about the same principle, is that worship me, become my devotee, and offer everything to me. So yeah, those are different references, reference points in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8 and 9. But of course, we understand that in thoughts and desires, there's also an inclination to worship or do something for that object of our desire. Worship in the sense that we give our time and attention. We, like for example, if we have an inclination like to particular sport, right? There's a tendency to worship someone, a team or a person, a favorite player or something like that, or a superstar, movie star or music star. So it's there on the material level. And similarly, there's practice of different rituals that the Vedas offer. And if we perform these rituals, if we don't have Krishna as the object of our worship, then the result of worship will be imperfect and temporary. So that's the understanding of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna speaks about it. Worship we cannot give up. Worship of something, affection and attachment for something is always there in the life of a person. Like there's also, what is it, Annamaya, and so on. There's different types of consciousness of a person. Sometimes it's just you interested in food, and then as a most advanced type of consciousness is just you interested in Krishna, in the Lord. Material conception, intellectual, and then spiritual, transcendental. Annamaya, Jnanamaya, and so on. Pranamaya, yeah. Annamaya, Pranamaya, Jnana Vijnana. Yeah. Anandamaya. Anything else? Thank you for your attention today. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Oh, Hare Krishna. Just have one question. I'm sorry. If you had any input, is it to be thought that because he wasn't thinking of Viṣṇu in the sacrifice, he was thinking of a woman, that he could take birth as a woman, as he was thinking of Urvaśī, his next life?
He worshipped. He initially was performing the sacrifice in which worship of Viṣṇu is recommended in Treta Yuga, but he thought of Urvaśī, and it impacted him because he desired to go to the planet Gandharva Loka and then further enjoy Urvaśī there. But at the very end of his life, because he was meditating and he was, I don't know exactly, did he have association with devotees or what happened? But Ayala Gita describes that he was singing the song of renunciation, realizing that his position was imperfect. And then eventually he accepts Krishna and becomes free from this impediment of material attachment to a woman. He sings that beautiful song, which has so many wonderful instructions. And one thing that I remember from Ayala Gita that stuck with me is that when Purūravā realizes what happened with him, he doesn't blame Urvaśī. He doesn't blame her for his ignorance in accepting this, her as the object of worship and interest. He blames himself. He blames his lack of knowledge and proper realization. He doesn't blame Urvaśī for that, but he blames himself. So that's a really nice attitude of someone who is trying to become a sincere sadhaka, sincere practitioner of bhakti. He doesn't blame an object of a woman or an object of his affection. He blames himself, lack of knowledge, lack of experience, lack of understanding, lack of practice and seriousness. And in this way, if we see that, if we find no fault in others, but only within ourselves, in this humble position, then knowledge of bhakti jnana can be given to us. It's actually based on vairagya for a very large degree. If we perform, if we renounce from material activities in the sense of bhakti, attaching ourselves to Krishna, then simply by that renunciation, following of course rules and regulations of practice sincerely, it will give us a lot of bhakti jnana, a lot of knowledge on its own like that. So renunciation is important in this path. Vairagya vidya, it's important. So.
Okay, thank you very much for a wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. We'll end the class here.